The people of Delphi are making it clear this morning they're not giving up hope on finding the person who killed teenagers Abby Williams and Libby German.
And now there are new ways the community is honoring their memory. Naomi Peskovich joins us now to show us how.
This is what you'll see around Delphi and surrounding communities. Those orange lights shine brightly when the sun goes down. They are there to support police as they work countless hours on this investigation, and they're for sale at local stores.
Welcome to Amber Light, where we still keep those amber or orange light bulbs burning on our porches in the hopes of justice for Abby and Libby. Ricci Davis has been in the news a lot lately. Who's Ricci Davis, you might ask? He's a prisoner that's incarcerated in the Newcastle, Indiana prison system for drug-related charges, drug dealing and such. He was also part of some recent defense motions that were additions to the defense's motion to correct errors in their pursuit for a new trial. In these recent defense motions, Ricci Davis was identified as a connection who had personal knowledge of some of the other third-party suspects in this case, Ron Logan and Keegan Kline. Ricci Davis has had the unique position in the prison system to get to know both Ron Logan before he passed away and Keegan Kline, and has come forth with some information that suggests that both Ron Logan and Keegan Kline know a lot more than they're telling, that they were involved themselves in the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Ricci Davis also proposes that Richard Allen, who was recently convicted and sentenced to 130 years, is innocent. Now, of course, the court, Special Judge Francis Gall, has denied all motions to correct error for a new trial. The only motion by the defense that the judge approved was a request to protect documents, to preserve documents, and all of that would be for the appeal process. But is Ricci Davis telling the truth? That's the topic for our discussion today.
Now to the latest in the ongoing legal saga that is the Delphi double murders case. Attorneys for convicted Delphi murderer Richard Allen are asking the judge to force the prosecutor to turn over interviews and documents that they say point to alternate suspects involved in the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. Now, they're asking for that evidence to be preserved for now and then eventually turned over as they attempt to try to overturn Allen's guilty verdict. Those records specifically are letters written by this man, inmate Ricci Davis, to Prosecutor McLealand. Now, in those letters, Davis apparently told Prosecutor McLealand, about conversations he had in prison with Ron Logan. Logan was the owner of the property where Abby and Libby's bodies were found and was once a prime suspect in their murders. Now, Davis alleged that Logan confessed to being involved in the murders alongside two other people. Davis also claimed that Keegan Kline, another inmate, had told him information that, quote, could only be known by someone involved in the killings. Kline also allegedly told Davis that Richard Allen was not involved in the murders. Now, neither Logan nor Kline have identified the third supposed suspect. Now, this new filing requests that any letters, recordings, and records related to Ricci Davis from law enforcement agencies be preserved and eventually handed over to the defense. And CBS 4 has an exclusive development in this story. Today, we received a letter mailed to us by Ricci Davis, the inmate at the center of all this. We had originally requested to go and interview Davis, but the Department of Corrections, they turned us down, citing, quote, security reasons. Now, in this letter, Davis told us he sent multiple letters about the supposed confessions to Prosecutor McLealand, and they were all ignored. He told us he believes that Richard Allen is an innocent man and wants to get justice for Abby and Libby. You can read his full letter, everything that he said. We have it posted for you right now on CBS4Indy.com.
I have the letter that Ricci Davis sent to the media. And it's right here. I'm sharing it. It is handwritten in cursive, which is hard to read by today's standards. Now, an old guy like me, I think I can get it. I'm not going to read the entire letter, but just try to pull out some significant parts of it. It starts off by saying this is regarding the missed interview to the Delphi murders by Ron Logan at the Indiana Correction Facility. You'll notice that the language in this letter is not perfect, but I'm going to read it just as it is. He says here, I am sorry of all the additional blocks of my continued effort of being able to speak of this. It has been a rough road of fighting against suspicious behavior of Carroll County, getting ahead, reporting that I simply failed a polygraph. And what he's talking about there is I believe I saw a state's response here to this motion from the defense to consider Ricci Davis's testimony. The response was, well, he failed a polygraph. So Ricci is making a point of that here, that Nick McLealand in the prosecutor's office replied that, well, he failed a polygraph, therefore he has no credibility. We all know that polygraphs are inadmissible in court. And the other thing I've come across elsewhere is Ricci Davis seems to have something similar to Tourette's syndrome. And he's on some meds for that. So his body may register some odd kinds of things. So the polygraph, yeah, I kind of agree with Ricci. That's probably not much to stand behind here. He goes on here. I'll pick right up where I left off. To many, in other words, failing a polygraph, to many, that would sound of legitimate reasoning to disregard. And the DA accusing of dishonesty with reckless regard of truth himself, and knowing that my information will cause answers by the community demanded in addition to integrity within the trust of bringing forward this case toward Richard Allen. I'm going to skip forward just a little bit here down to when finally it sounds like the police did send an investigator to speak with Ricci Davis, and he's going to describe that now. When the investigator was sent, I am the one treated as I done something wrong. I was also, it's tough to read. I was who requested to be placed on a polygraph. So it sounds like he said, hey, let me take a polygraph. It was made all about my motive, i.e., media attention. It was not about maybe I'm a man who has kids myself and felt deeply for them baby girls and families. He raises a good point here. Really, anytime we have a prisoner speaking, giving information about a case, we need to take that with a grain of salt because their motives can be impure. What are they going to benefit, for example? So, it is a bit, you have to take it with a grain of salt, I think, here. So I'm not saying that, well, that's the point of this video, right? Is he speaking the truth? But he says here, hey, look, really, it was more about me being a father, seeking, I'm going to paraphrase here, justice for Abby and Libby and their families. I was asked to take the important, most significant facts, placing into less than 2 paragraphs. So he's now saying, yeah, he had all this testimony, but he was forced to write this into 2 paragraphs. He's going to quote here. I'm going to be reading right here now. If I had been speaking to Ron Logan for months, how can I limit it within sentences? I was just told do the best that I can. So I do think here, if it speaks to our questions regarding the integrity of the investigation of these homicides in Delphi? Why would an investigation, if it is truly seeking truth, and they have an alleged witness making claims about alleged confessions in prison, wouldn't you want to show up and get all the information you could? Why do they limit him to writing 2 paragraphs? That's confusing to me. I'm going to skip down a little bit. I was so upset, I just offered to give me a recording device, and under full observation, they will have a recorded confession by Ron Logan. I was told, nah, Mr. Davis, it's okay. It isn't necessary, really. Now, what he's speaking about here, of course, is they wouldn't have a full confession by Ron Logan, but rather they would have testimony, alleged testimony about what Ron Logan confessed to Ricci Davis. But he suggested putting it on video, and it sounds like that was declined. Here he has a starred point, so this must be important. This cannot be denied by McLealand, district attorney, as the entire setting was fully recorded by video. It is undisputed facts that he can make. Of course, he has made effort to silence my genuine efforts. It gets worse. Before I get there, let me go back to that. He seems to be saying here that while he offered to have his interview recorded, and that was declined, that perhaps overall the session was recorded, maybe by cameras in an interrogation room or something to that effect. I don't really know, but he seems to think there's a recording out there, and that McLealand and the prosecution would have that somewhere in their evidence. Now we'll get to this point. It gets worse. While Richard Allen was about to go on trial, once again I attempted to notify the 3 who were involved once more. I think he means notify prosecution about these claims. There were facts and evidence to lead them to something, but he would not speak to me. I think he is Nick McLealand. That he would not speak to me since it related to Logan. Not 1 letter, not 2 or 3, but 7 letters before he convicted an innocent man. So he seems to be saying here that he was sending letters at the beginning of the trial, before the trial, during the trial, and after the trial was over. I at first believed Richard Allen possibly had his hand in it. However, the same evidence that I priorly reported, he taken the same before the jury, making the case against another man with a straight face. I realized then all I was told by Ron Logan was true. After all, and secondly, Richard Allen was not a guilty man. After all this left 2 uncharged men, and now back to 3 uncharged again. McLealand knows this, as family communicated that the letters were passed on to McLealand. Again, his language is a bit tough, but what he seems to be saying here is that, the prosecution had evidence that they've ignored, that they've refused, and that they prosecuted an allegedly innocent man, Richard Allen, with a straight face. So Ricci Davis is now thinking that Richard Allen is not involved, but there is a third party. In some of his other testimony elsewhere, he identified Keegan Kline, Ron Logan, and then a third person that was unnamed. So we'll move on. After Richard Allen's confession, McLealand got on TV Live, receiving his many pats on the back. I probably a Freudian slip. I said money, but his many pats on his back, and told the families of the girls and the community that he has not been aware of any other suspects, as that was the first question by the media. And I do remember that moment. The conference after the conviction came through, after the sentencing actually, where one of the reporters asked, "Hey, what about all these other names?" And he basically said he doesn't have any evidence. It's not, I think Ricci has misspoken here a little bit. He did not say that he was not aware of any other suspects. I think that he was aware of suspects, but that he didn't have evidence against them, and that should evidence, come forward, that they would investigate. So he's wrapping the letter up here. I'll probably read this to the end. I'm not asking to be believed. I am asking for people to ask questions, follow the evidence, and let them, poor victims, have justice, as well as jury settle Richard Allen's jury with all the facts, not distracted by the district attorney covering up cover-ups. This is what McLealand did not want heard. So he's alleging here, of course, that there are cover-ups. I would say questions. Many of us in the community following the Delphi murders and the trials and the conviction of Richard Allen would say that we have questions. I'm not going to go so far to say there's a cover-up, but there are many people who think that there is. In that same vein, he goes down here now to a question. My only question is, McLealand, can you sleep at night? But can you really, though? A little bit of a haunting question, assuming here that Nick McLealand has violated some sort of law here, or even a code of conduct, or acted out of a lack of integrity. I will say this. I don't have this in this video, but there are some, it's well documented how the defense really had to wrestle with the prosecution to really get discovery from them. There were delays. Things were not organized. They really had a rough time. And that is not typical, from what I understand, in the way of that prosecutors act. Normally, usually, well, even ethically and bound by law, prosecutors have to work in conjunction with defense to be transparent. There's the word, right? Transparency. This whole case has had a lack of transparency to the public for sure, but I think one could argue that a lack of transparency has been present to the defense as well. He wraps up his letter. Pray for them girls and families, and free the innocent, seek the guilty, and stand for true justice for all, good and bad. Ricci Davis. As I said earlier, you have to take this with a grain of salt. You have to be suspicious, because Ricci Davis is an inmate and he might have personal motives here of some sort of benefit to him. So, you just have to be wise with this type of material. But his letter does raise a couple of questions, a number of questions. I'm not going to go into all of them, but just to highlight here quickly. Is there a video out there somewhere of the police interviews with Ricci Davis? And if there is, I think I understand that the defense doesn't have that in their discovery, and that might be exculpatory evidence regarding third parties. So there's a concern with that, and others have mentioned this too. Do we potentially have grounds here or foundation for some Brady violations of the prosecution? I'm not an expert, but what I understand of Brady is that if a prosecution withholds material exculpatory evidence from a defense that may change the outcome of a verdict, that can be held in violation of due process. I thought it might be helpful to bring out some information about Ricci Davis himself. I couldn't find the original court documents, but I did find the record of appeal when he appealed his conviction. I've got that here. In this appeal, there are 3 issues. I'm only going to really talk about one, but I'll poke at real quickly just so you're aware. 3 issues that were raised on appeal. The first, number 1, is whether or not the trial court abused its discretion by failing to instruct the jury on lesser included offenses of dealing methamphetamine. 2, whether the trial court abused its discretion by excluding evidence regarding the accuracy of the state's measurement of distance between Davis's house and 2 youth program centers. And then 3, and this is the one that I'm going to maybe poke at a little bit or interrogate, whether Davis's sentence is appropriate in the light of the nature of the offense and his character. So it is a little bit interesting. I was surprised. Ricci Davis has been sentenced to 50 years in prison for what I understand to be manufacturing, distributing, and selling methamphetamines. So yeah, he's a drug producer. He was a drug producer and a drug dealer, but he's sentenced to 50 years, and that seems excessive. So I was curious about that. Let's get into this appeal. And first of all, we're going to share some background information that maybe not everybody knows. Shortly before 11 p.m. on May 19th, 2014, a man called Huntington County Sheriff's Department on its non-emergency line and reported that he had a warrant and was, quote, strung out on meth and to come get him and take it all out of his house, unquote. In response to that call, Sheriff's Department dispatcher dispatched the Huntington Police Department to his address. Okay, and they verified that, yes, Davis was the guy that called and he had an active warrant. When the police officers arrived at the residence and were positioning themselves around the property, Gregory Fisher emerged from the house. Detective Captain, now Chief Hacker, intercepted him, and Fisher confirmed that Davis was present and indicated that methamphetamine was being manufactured inside the house. The possibility of an active methamphetamine lab necessitated special protocol for searching and evacuating the residence. The officers knocked on the front door, and Joshua Dyer and Davis's wife, Melinda Bower, I'm assuming, came outside to speak with officers. They advised that 2 children were asleep in the living room, so the officers permitted Dyer to return to the house to retrieve them. During this time, Davis's roommate, Rochelle Lesh, and Vic Bowling attempted to exit the house through the back door and were corralled by the police for questioning. Once the first floor had been cleared, the officers allowed Boer, at her request, to go back inside to summon Davis from the second floor. 15 minutes after police had first knocked on the door, Davis came downstairs along with Thomas Hale and Amanda Casto. The officers escorted him outside, placed him in handcuffs, and administered his Miranda rights. Davis indicated that he and Hale had been manufacturing methamphetamines on the second floor of the house. Davis further stated that when they heard the officers knocking on the door, Hale began hiding the supplies. Thus, Davis offered to accompany the officers inside to show them where everything was. For safety reasons, the officers would not allow Davis back into the house, but upon questioning as to whether there was an active lab that could pose any danger to the officers, Davis assured them that everything was safe. As the officers climbed the staircase, they detected the very distinct and overwhelming chemical odor associated with manufacturing methamphetamines. The odor was most potent in the upstairs bathroom, emanating from the toilet and the sink in particular. Once they confirmed that there was nobody else in the house, the officers went back outside to retrieve their protective gear. After obtaining consent to search the home from the landlord, several officers trained in dismantling methamphetamine labs entered the house to process the scene. No active methamphetamine lab was discovered, nor did the police officers recover any finished methamphetamine product. However, spread throughout nearly room of the house, the officers found evidence of all the ingredients and other equipment necessary to manufacture methamphetamines, including numerous empty boxes and blister packs. I'm going to skip here. There's just a list of things. I don't know much about making meth, but skipping on down here. They did test a liquid substance, and that indicated the presence of methamphetamine, but the sample was too diluted to confirm. On May 20th, 2014, the state filed an information charging Davis with a Class A felony for dealing methamphetamine within 1,000 feet of a youth program center. On October 1st through October 3rd, 2014, the trial court conducted a jury trial. At the close of the evidence, the jury returned a guilty verdict. On October 28, 2014, the trial court held a sentencing hearing. After entering a judgment of conviction on the Class A felony, the trial court imposed a 50-year sentence, fully executed in the Indiana Department of Corrections. Then Davis now appeals. So I'm going to stop reading there, and I'm going to go now to the third point where he is challenging or appealing the length of his sentence. So here's the third part, appropriateness of sentence. Lastly, Davis claims that his sentence is inappropriate. There's a bunch of legal jargon here, so I'm going to skip. So here is where the court begins to comment. Looking first to the nature of the offense, we find that Davis was manufacturing methamphetamine every day for nearly 5 months in the home that he shared with his wife and her child and Lesh. He relied upon his methamphetamine-addicted friends to supply him with ingredients in exchange for the finished product. Manufacturing methamphetamine is a notoriously dangerous activity. The combination of toxic chemicals is unsafe to breathe, and the volatile nature of the ingredients creates a serious risk for a massive explosion. Yet Davis chose to manufacture methamphetamine on a daily basis, notwithstanding the fact that he had jeopardized numerous human lives each time he did so. At the time the police officers arrived to execute the arrest warrant, there were 9 other people in the house, including Davis's wife and 2 young children. The fact that the officers recovered 2 gas masks from the second floor of the house clearly indicates that Davis was aware of the dangers of inhaling the methamphetamine fumes, but his manufacturing process was seemingly undeterred by the 2 toddlers asleep in the living room. It is apparent that Davis's priority was just to feed his own addiction and his friends' addictions without regard to the consequences. As to his character, the record reveals that Davis began using illicit drugs at age 14 and was using methamphetamines by age 21. Between the ages of 19 and 34, Davis accumulated a significant criminal history, including 6 felony and 3 misdemeanor convictions. His criminal resume includes convictions for burglary, theft, forgery, auto theft, possession of marijuana and methamphetamines, and obtaining a controlled substance by fraud or deceit. Thus, Davis's prior incarcerations have clearly been insufficient to deter him from future criminal conduct. Moreover, Davis has demonstrated disrespect for the authority of the courts and has rejected the opportunity for rehabilitation, as evidenced by the fact that his probation was revoked on 5 separate occasions, and he failed to successfully complete a drug court program. At the time of the instant offense, Davis was on probation and had not even been released from the DOC for a year. Davis is the biological father of 1 child. Instead of striving to set a good example for his son and ensuring his ability to provide support and guidance for his son, Davis rejected prior opportunities for rehabilitation and chose to maintain his criminal lifestyle. We cannot say that his sentence is inappropriate. The appeal that Ricci Davis submitted was obviously denied, and he is serving a 50-year sentence for methamphetamine production, distribution, being a common nuisance, all of these things. Clearly, Ricci Davis was a habitual criminal, a drug addict who made a lot of really bad choices in life, had been arrested a number of times, had been on probation. Even at this point of his arrest, he was just a year out of the Department of Corrections. So the court decided to throw the book at him and gave him this massive sentence. So obviously, he is probably not the most credible witness. Is Ricci Davis telling the truth? Kind of hard to say, isn't it? I don't really know a lot about social structures in the prison system. Who has power, who doesn't. I don't have a lot of experience there, but I kind of wondered if maybe that would have some bearing on this discussion about whether or not Ricci Davis is telling the truth or not. So I found this website. You can find anything on the internet, right? And this is really about the pecking order in the prison systems, the social hierarchy. And it starts out by, hey, look, the most powerful people in prisons, and we're talking about inmates here, the most powerful inmates are those that have gang affiliations or, sort of connections. People that have, maybe they're cartel members, things like that. And then you go on down the chain. And then as you get to the bottom, those at the bottom have less status and would be at greater risk internal to the prisons. So I'm not going to read the whole web page, but as we get to the bottom, here's what I'm showing on this website. Below these people that are more powerful, below this are inmates who are incarcerated for crimes even other inmates find reprehensible. Crimes where the victims could be another inmate's loved ones are targeted. These include rape, and sexual offenses against children. Inmates will victimize these people just to act out rage gathered from other sources because they have no relevant social status. They are throwaway people. So we kind of see that. We kind of know that. That's commonly known that people with those types of crimes are going to be in real trouble in the prison. But then at the bottom, I was kind of surprised by this because I thought that those were the people at the very bottom. But at the bottom of the stack, lower than low, are informants or snitches. You don't have to participate in another inmate's rule breaking or crime, but you never tell staff what another inmate is up to. Doing so often means a semi-permanent assignment to an administrative segregation where you spend most of your time in your cell and have few privileges or diversions. Even if the inmate you have formed on is released, goes to another institution, or dies, he likely still has friends on the inside who will waste no time reminding you that you violated the inmate code of conduct. So the lowest of the low are snitches. Is Ricci Davis telling the truth? Who knows? That is the question of the day, isn't it? He seems to suggest that he has insider knowledge by experience with meeting Ron Logan when he was alive, taking Ron Logan's confessions, alleged confessions, having conversations with Keegan Kline afterwards, and learning more and more about Keegan Kline's involvement, and reaching out to the prosecution to try to get those stories out, all due to a sense of a desire for justice for the girls. And since he is a father in his own right, thinking about his own child, that's possible. Those are all possible realities here. The other thing that kind of lends credibility potentially to his testimony is the fact that he's willingly becoming a snitch, the lowest of the low in the prison system. So it doesn't seem like there is much in the way of benefit for him here, that maybe, perhaps in his maturity as he has grown, he is wanting to maybe kind of do the right thing finally in his life. Who knows? He is a criminal. He's incarcerated for some really bad things, for some poor judgment. Is he telling the truth? I'd be interested to hear your opinions on that. Hey, thanks for watching.